I'm live. Hello. Welcome. Oh my goodness, there are already people here. If you're here, leave a comment letting me know who's joining me. Because right now I kind of feel like I'm just talking to myself all alone here. But I know that you're there. I'm excited that you're there. I'm excited to be spending this morning with you. And we're going to wait a few minutes just to make sure that everyone can get on who is joining me right now. Yeah, it's great to have all of you here, whoever you may be. I was thinking that as I was waiting for more people to join, I would tell you a little bit about some of the plants in my house, because you may see behind me that there are some plants, and I have some extra fun ones that I wanted to show you. So this one is one of my favorites because he has hair, and I think it's very fun. So this is one of my favorite plants. Hello to Silas and the Folks and the Bergens. I'm so glad that all of you are here right now. Let's see. I also have this plant, which is pretty fun. This one was actually given to me by Josh and Nathaniel's mom. And she gave it to me back in the summer, so it was a lot smaller and it's grown a lot. But this is a really fun plant that I'm enjoying watching grow. So those are a couple of the plants that I have in my house. I feel like they're, one of the most interesting things in my home. This is my kitchen. It's kind of little, but it works perfectly for me because I'm just one person. I don't need too much. Yeah, okay, we do still have a couple of people rolling in, so I'm gonna wait a couple minutes longer, which means I need to vamp and I need to talk for a little bit longer. I'm trying to think, what did you have for breakfast today? I had avocado toast with an egg on it, and then I also made some fruit salad. And so in that fruit salad, I had grapes and bananas and apples and blueberries, and it was pretty delicious. And now our baking is gonna be like my breakfast dessert. I don't know if breakfast dessert is like a normal thing to do, probably not. But you know what? It's Easter weekend, so we get to do whatever we wanna do, right? If we wanna have breakfast dessert, then we can do that. Okay. Silas had blueberries and flakes. Silas, we both had blueberries this morning. We ate them a little bit differently, but we both had blueberries, and I think that's pretty cool. There's so I can see outside the window, and there's a path behind our house. So I'm just watching some people walk their dogs out there right now. So if I get a little bit distracted, just know that I'm watching people walk their dogs behind my house. Okay, I feel like I've waited long enough. Declan is a big fan of breakfast dessert. Thank you, Declan. I'm glad we're on the same page about that. So Declan, how about we get started with our breakfast dessert right now? So if you haven't heard, we are making something that's called resurrection rolls. And you have two options for how you're gonna do it. Either you're gonna make it from scratch, or maybe you have dough that's already ready for you in a can. Both options are super great and are going to be super delicious, but I'm going to start with making them from scratch because that one's gonna take a little bit longer. So the first thing we have to do is warm up a little bit of milk. So I have here some oat milk, unsweetened original oat milk. I think it's probably the most delicious milk out there, but you're allowed to believe something different. So you need half a cup of milk. I'm gonna pour it into my bowl. And then I'm going to put it into the microwave for like 30 seconds. You don't want it to be too hot, but you do want it to be a little bit warm. And I do want to apologize in advance because my microwave is kind of loud and obnoxious, and it makes a really big beeping sound. So forgive me in advance for the obnoxious microwave. Okay, so 30 seconds on the clock there. Next up, you're gonna need to grab your big bowl and your yeast. So yeast is this crazy, cool, magical thing that's gonna make our dough get bigger. I don't totally understand how it works. I just know that it does. So we need 2 teaspoons of yeast, or if you have one of those packets of yeast, you can just put the whole packet in. That's my obnoxious microwave. It beeps 4 times every time, and I don't know how to change it, so that's what we're stuck with. All right, so I put in 2 teaspoons of yeast, and now we need 1 tablespoon of sugar. So that's a big old tablespoon. The sugar is actually what the yeast eats. Obviously, yeast doesn't have a mouth, so I don't really know how it eats it, but it eats the sugar and releases like carbon dioxide to make it bubbly. And that's the extent of my knowledge with yeast. Okay, so we're going to take our warm ½ cup of milk and pour it into our bowl that has the yeast and the sugar inside of it. All right, and now I'm gonna take a little baby whisk and just mix it all together. Make sure that the sugar and the yeast are all combined with the milk. You don't have to go too crazy. Just a nice little stir. And then we're gonna take this and set it to the side because the yeast needs some time to work its magic, to do its thing. It needs about 5 minutes. And so I thought that as we were waiting, I would read you a story. Because you may have heard that this is Easter weekend. And that's the whole reason that we're baking together today. We're baking resurrection rolls. And a little bit later, you'll find out why they're called resurrection rolls. But right now, I wanted to start by reading you a story from the Jesus Storybook Bible. And I'm sure there are probably some of you who have the same Bible at home. I'm going to read for you this story. And this story comes right after Jesus was arrested and they put him on trial and they decided that he was going to die. So this story is called The Sun Stops Shining. So you're a king, are you? The Roman soldiers jeered. Then you'll need a crown and a robe. They gave Jesus a crown made out of thorns and put a purple robe on him and pretended to bow down to him. Your Majesty, they said. Then they whipped him and spat on him. They didn't understand that this was the Prince of Life, the King of heaven and earth who had come to rescue them. The soldiers made him a sign. It said, "Our King," and nailed it to a wooden cross. They walked up a hill outside the city. Jesus carried the cross on his back. Jesus had never done anything wrong, but they were going to kill him the way criminals were killed. They nailed Jesus to the cross. "Father, forgive them," Jesus gasped. "They don't understand what they're doing." "You say you've come to rescue us," people shouted, "but you can't even rescue yourself." But they were wrong. Jesus could have rescued himself. A legion of angels would have flown to his side if he'd called. "If you were really the Son of God, you could just climb down off that cross," they said. And of course, they were right. Jesus could have just climbed down. Actually, he could have just said a word and made it all stop. Like when he healed that little girl and stilled the storm and fed 5,000 people. But Jesus stayed. You see, they didn't understand. It wasn't the nails that kept Jesus there. It was love. "Papa," Jesus cried, frantically searching the sky. "Papa, where are you?" Don't leave me. And for the first time and the last, when he spoke, nothing happened. Just a horrible, endless silence. God didn't answer. He turned away from his boy. Tears rolled down Jesus' face, the face of the one who would wipe away every tear from every eye. Even though it was midday, a dreadful darkness covered the face of the world. The sun could not shine. The earth trembled and quaked. The great mountains shook, rocks split in two, until it seemed that the whole world would break, that creation itself would tear apart. The full force of the storm of God's fierce anger at sin was coming down on his own son instead of his people. It was the only way that God could destroy sin and not destroy his children whose hearts were filled with sin. Then Jesus shouted out in a loud voice, "It is finished." And it was. He had done it. Jesus had rescued the whole world. "Father," Jesus cried, "I give you my life." And with a great sigh, he let himself die. Strange clouds and shadows filled the sky. Purple, orange, black, like a bruise. Jesus' friends gently carried Jesus. They laid Jesus in a new tomb carved out of rock. How could Jesus die? What had gone wrong? What did it mean? They didn't know anything anymore. Except they did know that their hearts were breaking. "That's the end of Jesus," the leaders said. But just to be sure, they sent strong soldiers to guard the tomb. They hauled a huge stone in front of the door to the tomb so that no one could get in or out. And that was the story that we usually tell on Good Friday, which was yesterday. Good Friday is the day that we remember Jesus died. And today, which is called Holy Saturday, is the day when we wait for tomorrow, because tomorrow is Easter Sunday. And you probably already know this, but there's something really extra special that happens on Easter Sunday. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, I want to get back to our yeast. And if yours is like mine, then there should be a few bubbles in there by now. And that's how you know that the yeast is doing its thing. So next up, we want to add some melted butter to this. You want 3 tablespoons of that. I already measured mine out, so there's 3 tablespoons of butter in here, and now I just need to microwave it to melt it down. Okay, so as we are melting our butter, we can also add some other things to this bowl. So you want to add 3 more tablespoons of sugar. So we have 1, 2, 3. We're also going to add an egg. Now, I used to be able to crack an egg with one hand, but I'm not confident I can do that anymore, so I'm not going to try and show off. All right, there we have our egg. And then we also want to add in vanilla. The recipe says half a teaspoon. I figured, as much as you think is good. That's something you'll notice about me when I bake, is maybe I don't always follow all the instructions the way that I should. That's probably okay though. All right, so we have all of those in there. And now we have our melted butter that we can also pour in. I'm gonna give it a little swirl to make sure all of it is melted. And we can pour that in there. Next, we are going to mix this. So maybe you have a stand mixer, maybe you have a hand mixer like me. Just put this on low and make sure that all of the ingredients get mixed around. It's going to be a little loud, so I'm not going to say anything. So you can enjoy watching me mix this. Okay, that should be good. Now what we want to do is add all of our dry ingredients. So we have all of our wet ingredients in here already. Next up is the dry ones. So first we can add some salt. We need half a teaspoon of that. So we have salt in there, as well as half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, I am a big fan of cinnamon. So I'm gonna do half a teaspoon and then some, because, sorry, that was loud. Cinnamon is delicious. Also, I think there are like some healthy things, like I think cinnamon is good for you. So probably extra isn't a bad thing. And then we need our flour. So we need 2 cups of flour. And don't judge me for this one, but I don't really measure flour the right way, you know, the way that you're supposed to, where you like level it off and everything. Like sometimes I'll take my finger and like do a little bit of that. But I really don't do it properly. And I mean, I've been baking for 20 plus years, and I've never run into serious dangers from not measuring flour the right way. So, you know, do what you're most comfortable with. But if that doesn't include properly measuring flour, then I think you'll be okay. Okay, so we have our 2 cups of flour in there. We have all of our dry ingredients in there. And now what you're going to want to do is mix this until a dough ball forms. So it's probably going to take a couple of minutes. Yeah, you're just going to want to mix it up until there's a dough ball. It'll be a little bit sticky still, but that's what you want. So it's going to take a couple of minutes. This part will be boring to watch. I'm sorry, but that's just the way that live baking works. So let's mix our dough all together. You also will want to put it onto a higher speed so that it does its thing. Whoop. Just very sticky. All right, I'm going to pop out my dough hooks and squish this off. I should also mention that I did wash my hands before I started this. So I hope that you also washed your hands, especially if you're planning on sharing this with other people. Okay, so we have our dough here in our bowl. Now what we want to do is knead it. So I'm going to take a little bit of flour, put it on my counter in front of me, just to make sure that the dough doesn't stick too much to the counter. And now you will take your dough and plop it onto the counter, which might take a little bit to get it out there. Ooh. That sort of worked. Mine is still quite sticky. So if yours is too, that's probably fine. Whoop. All right, so just get all, or as much as you can, out onto the table in front of you. Oh, this smells really good. I'm so excited about this. All that cinnamon I put in there, it's really just, I can smell it. Okay. It's probably mostly clean. Now you're gonna want to knead your dough. So you might wanna get your parents to help you with this, show you how to do it, but you're just gonna squish it and move it around until it's smooths out a little bit and it's less sticky than when it came out of the bowl. This is one of my favorite parts because you get to get your hands in it. And I think that that's fun. Also, it kind of feels like Play-Doh, which is pretty exciting. But Play-Doh that actually tastes good. Because I don't know if you've tasted some of the Play-Dohs that are out there. You shouldn't. But if you have, they're not the most delicious thing. Okay, so just a little bit of kneading. And you're going to be left with this beautiful little dough ball. She's pretty cute, don't you think? And now is the time where I have to deliver a little bit of bad news if you're baking this with me. Because the thing about yeast is it takes some time to actually rise. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this into another bowl and cover it with plastic wrap and then let it rise for about an hour or until it has doubled in size. So if you leave it in a warm place, like next to a window, if the sun, is the sun shining? Sun's kind of shining. So if it's in a warm place, it'll rise a little bit faster, but it'll take up to about an hour. So you're going to want to take another clean bowl and grease it a little bit. So I'm actually just going to take, this is the melted butter that I used. I'm just going to grease it that way. Because that's allowed. It's a good way to do it. So rub a little bit of butter on your bowl so that the dough doesn't stick to it. Then you're going to take your dough ball, plop it in. And I'm going to wash my hands because there's melted butter on them. All right, and now take some plastic wrap, cover your bowl so that there's no air getting in. All right, there's my nicely covered bowl. I am going to leave this just next to a window so that it can rise for that hour. So I'll just set it over here. And so you have a couple of options. If you did the dough from scratch, you can pause the video and come back in an hour when your dough has risen and follow along with the rest. You could watch the rest of this so you know what's coming next, totally up to you, whatever your family decides that you want to do. I did actually make an extra batch last night so that it would be risen for today. So I am able to move on to the next step because I do have a second batch of dough. So I'm going to set that over here. And just before I roll it out, I'm actually going to prepare our cinnamon sugar mixture. So I need to grab an extra bowl. And in here, you are going to put 3 tablespoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And we're going to use this a little bit later, but we want to make sure that it's ready now. So 1, 2, 3 tablespoons of sugar. And then we also want our cinnamon. So we've said 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to use a half teaspoon, which means that I need 2 of them. And that might actually be a little bit more than a full teaspoon, but you know I love cinnamon. All right, now we're going to take that cinnamon and that sugar and just mix it together. So we have a delicious cinnamon sugar concoction. Okay. That's all nice and mixed. I'm going to set it to the side and we're going to use it a little bit later. Does anyone else have a huge mess in front of them? Because I have quite a bit of a mess in front of me. But that's what makes baking so fun, is that you're allowed to make a mess. You just have to clean it up later. Okay. Before I move on to rolling my dough, I am going to preheat my oven. So if you are making the dough from scratch, you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. If you're using the dough from a can, just do it to whatever the can says. I'm using the Pillsbury crescent rolls, and that one says 375. So let me preheat my oven. All right, the oven is preheating, it's warming up, and now we can get ready to roll out our dough. So I'm going to take some flour again, just to make sure that the dough isn't sticking to the surface. And then I'm gonna take this risen dough, plop it on, plop it, plop. And now I'm going to take a rolling pin. And you want to roll this out. The recipe says to a 1/4 inch. Just roll it out till it's thin enough. You know, just get a good sense of what you think feels good, and roll it out to there. You want to try and roll it into a circular shape, kind of like a pizza crust. That's sort of the shape that we're going for, is a pizza crust shape. And I'm adding more flour to the top of my dough just because my rolling pin is sticking to it. And I'm definitely shaking the table that my camera is sitting on right now. Also, I have flour on my shirt. I don't own an apron, so baking can sometimes just be a little bit messier than you maybe planned for it to be. And that's okay too. I'm realizing that I never responded to some of these comments. Josh, I do not drink oat, yeah. I drink the So Fresh, what is it called? Earth's Own, yeah. Earth's Own So Fresh oat milk. I think it's the most delicious one. I've tried a bunch of them. That just happens to be my favorite oat milk. Okay. You're gonna need some muscles to actually roll out this dough. But that's good. You're getting in your Saturday morning workout, which is pretty handy. All right, I'm almost at a 1/4 inch here. This feels pretty good. So here, I can show you. I don't know if this is a bad idea or not. Okay, so That's my dough. It's in a nice pizza crust sized circle. And now you're going to cut it into 8 triangles, the same way that you would cut a pizza crust. So yeah, cut it into 8 triangles. I'm going to get out a cutting board and a knife so that I can do that. So let's see here. On my cutting board. And a knife. All right, so cutting this like a pizza. There's one. And, all right. So now I have 8 pieces of dough that look like this. And now we're at the part where the dough from scratch and the dough from a can basically works the same way. So I'm going to get out my crescent dough that I have here. I did pre-pop it because it really stresses me out to pop these things. So I didn't really want to do it on camera and embarrass myself. So let me pull out the rest of this dough. And you'll see with these crescent rolls, when you roll it out, you pull it apart, it already comes in some nice triangles. So, whoop, there's so much stuff on my counter right now. I'm running out of space. Let me move a few things over just to make my life a little bit easier. Someone once told me that you should always clean as you go when you're baking, which is a really good idea. And obviously something that I have not been doing because I don't really want to make you watch me do the dishes because that's not quite as fun. Okay, so now we have our dough. Our crescent roll dough. Let me just show you. I'll pull it apart. And we have kind of a wonky looking triangle, but we do have a triangle here. So now comes the really fun part. But just before we do it, I do need to melt some more butter. So this is again about 3 tablespoons, give or take. So I am going to melt it. You can also, if you don't want to use butter, you could just use water. We just need to have something that we can dip our marshmallows into to make them a little bit stickier. But I figure if you're baking, butter is so delicious. You want to use as much of it as you possibly can, right? So we'll put that up there. Okay, and we'll let our butter melt. What you're going to want to have prepared in front of you is a bit of a clear surface, and you're going to need your butter, your cinnamon sugar, and then the pan that you are going to be baking on. Oh, also the marshmallows. The marshmallows are a very important part of this. So let me move just a couple of things out of the way. I'll bring my pan over. I just dropped the Bible. Whoops. Okay. So I have my marshmallows here that I'm going to open up. All right. Okay. Nice and melted. Gonna mix it a little bit more. Okay. So I have my butter, I have my cinnamon sugar, I have my rolls, my dough, uh, and then I also have my marshmallows. So I'm just pulling apart a couple of these rolls to make sure that they're all ready for me to go. And then what we are going to do is we are going to take a marshmallow. And I want you to pretend with me that this marshmallow is Jesus's body. Now, Jesus's body probably wasn't quite this squishy, but we're just going to pretend that this is Jesus's body. And when Jesus died, they took his body, and what they did back then is they covered it in oils and spices. That was how they prepared a body to bury it. So our butter or our water, we're going to dip the marshmallow in, and that's kind of like covering Jesus's body in oil. Now that our marshmallow is covered in butter, we're going to roll it into the cinnamon sugar, just like Jesus's body was covered in spices to prepare him for his burial. So once Jesus's body was covered in those oils and those spices, they wrapped him up and put him in a tomb. So we are going to wrap up our marshmallow nice and tight. There's not like a perfect way to do this. You just want to make sure that the entire marshmallow is covered, that there aren't any spots where you can peek through and see it. Because the soldiers and the guards did a really good job of making sure that there were no cracks, that there were no holes in the tomb that they put Jesus in, because they wanted to make sure that no one could get in there and no one could get out of there. Because they were worried that the disciples were going to go and steal Jesus's body and then tell a lie that Jesus had risen just because they stole the body. So the guards were they were being very careful to make sure that that tomb was closed. Just like this, all nice and closed, nice and tight. So once you have it all rolled up, you can put it onto your baking tray and then do the next marshmallow. So you'll be making 8 in total. So again, you put the marshmallow into the butter and then you dip it into the cinnamon sugar, roll it up. And then after it's all covered in the cinnamon sugar, you take one of your dough triangles and wrap up the marshmallow. Now this part is obviously messy, but that's what makes it fun, right? Okay. Mine definitely don't look perfect. But what matters is how delicious they taste at the end. And I think these ones are going to be pretty good. Something that I didn't tell you at the beginning of this when we first started was that I have never actually made these before. And this is the first time that I am rolling marshmallows in the butter and the sugar. So I'm hoping that it works because I didn't test it beforehand. But, you know, I feel like what could go wrong? You know, there's marshmallows, there's sugar, there's dough. It all seems pretty foolproof to me. All right, I'm at 3. Let's see if I can go any faster, because I don't want to make you just watch me roll marshmallows for a super long time. Though I guess if we're doing it together, it shouldn't be boring. You know, I'm excited for the day when I will get to bake with all of you in person. I was thinking recently about how fun it would be if we got to make these resurrection rolls at Crosspoint in the kitchen there. So one day, that's my plan. My plan is maybe next Easter, we'll be able to make these on a Sunday morning all together. Because I think that would be lots of fun. One of my favorite things to do with my mom when I was growing up was to bake with her. Because I thought it was so much fun to spend time together, to use our hands, to work together, and then to get to eat something delicious at the end. So, I mean, hopefully you're making these with someone that you love right now. You know, I might be alone in my kitchen, but I do feel like I'm making them with all the people that I love because I know that all of you are here with me. All right, I am halfway through my 8. I've done 4. So far, feels pretty good. I keep on wanting to lick my fingers because they're covered in butter and sugar. And wouldn't that be a delicious snack? But I'm practicing self-control. And because my hands are sticky and full of that sugar as I'm rolling these, there's some sugar and cinnamon that's getting onto the outside. But again, I think that's just going to make it extra delicious. Thank you, Josh, for being impressed with me not doing a test beforehand. I do, in fact, like to live life on the edge. Also, part of it was just that I've been very busy, so I didn't actually have time to do a test. But I'll go with what you said, Josh, and just say that I like living on the edge. Okay. Whew, we're getting close. I also may have never made these before, but today I am making 3 batches of them because I have the crescent rolls, the Pillsbury crescent rolls that I'm making, plus I made the dough last night so that I could show you how to roll it out. Plus I made the dough this morning so that I could show you how to make the dough. So yeah, I'm going to have 3 batches of these rolls. I am one person who is going to have 24 resurrection rolls. So that's interesting. An interesting conundrum. But maybe I'll go and deliver them like to my friends' houses and surprise them. Maybe that's something that you can do. Maybe not with the resurrection rolls. I don't know if you're going to have enough to share with friends. But maybe you could bake something else this weekend and go and drop them off at one of your friends or family members' houses, just as a surprise. Because I know that I would love if someone gave me surprise baking. So imagine how happy it would make them. So maybe you can think now, who could I share this baking with? Okay, I have 2 left. 2 to go. 2 to go of my first batch, I should say. I should have like some background music right now. I could make my own background music, sing something for you, but that might be weird. I don't know. Okay. I'm now down to my final piece of dough. All right. Let's make this one the best one yet. All right, let's see. Actually, the dough I left myself with is kind of a funky looking piece, so it probably won't be the best one yet. Whoa, this is like the smallest piece. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the whole marshmallow wrapped. So if you followed the same measurements that I did, you're probably going to have some extra cinnamon sugar. And if you're not making another batch like I am, you're probably wondering, well, what am I going to do with all of this? One of my favorite treats when I was a kid was cinnamon sugar toast. So now you have just a wonderful amount of cinnamon sugar left to make cinnamon sugar toast. And cinnamon sugar is also great because you don't need to like store it in a fridge or anything, and it won't go bad. So you can leave it in a container and then have cinnamon sugar ready for maybe a delicious breakfast or a delicious snack in the afternoon. Just something nice and exciting for you. Okay, here is my final resurrection roll. So I'm going to put this onto my pan. I'm going to wipe my hands because they're nice and covered in butter and sugar right now. All right, and I am going to take these rolls and put them into the oven and set a timer for 10 minutes. These are the Pillsbury Crescent rolls, and so that's what the package said. If you did the homemade dough, then you are going to want to put those in the oven for more like 15 to 20 minutes. Put them in there for 15 minutes and then watch them. Wait until they get a little bit brown, and then you'll know they're done. So I'll put these in for 10 minutes. Whew. And I will set a timer for 10 minutes just to make sure that I don't forget about them. Because that's happened to me before, and I've burned things, and then I've been really sad. So don't do that. Now, I'm going to pick up the Bible that I dropped on the floor, and I am going to pick up where we left off. So remember, the last time that I read this story, we ended with the soldiers rolling a rock in front of the tomb to make sure that no one could get in and no one could get out. Now, this story is called God's Wonderful Surprise. It says that Jesus' friends were sad. They would never see their best friend again. How could this happen? Wasn't Jesus the rescuer? The king that God had promised? It wasn't supposed to end like this. Well, yes, but whoever said anything about the end? Just before sunrise, on the third day, God sent an earthquake, an angel from heaven. When the guards saw the angel, they fell down with fright. The angel rolled the huge stone away, sat on top of it, and waited. At the first glimmer of dawn, Mary Magdalene and other women headed to the tomb to wash Jesus' body. The early morning sun slanted through the ancient olive trees, drops of dew glittering on leaves and grasses, like little tears everywhere. The friends walked quietly along the hilly path, through the olive groves until they reached the tomb. And immediately, they noticed something odd. It was wide open. They peered through the opening into the dark tomb. But wait, Jesus' body was gone. And something else. A shining man was there, with clothes made from lightning. Don't be scared, the angel said. But they couldn't help it. They screamed anyway. The angel asked them, "What are you doing here? This is a tomb, and tombs are for dead people." The women couldn't speak. "Jesus isn't dead anymore," he said. "He's alive again." And their hearts leapt. And then the angel laughed with such gladness that they felt, for a moment, as if they had woken from a nightmare. The other women rushed home, but Mary stayed behind. How could it be true? Jesus was definitely dead. How could he be alive? Just then, Mary heard someone else in the garden. Perhaps it's the gardener, she thought. He'll know where Jesus' body is. I don't know where Jesus is, Mary said urgently. I can't find him. But it was all right. Jesus knew where she was, and he had found her. Mary. Only one person said her name like that. She could hear her heart thumping. She turned around. She could just make out a figure. She shaded her eyes to see and thought she was dreaming. But she wasn't dreaming. She was seeing Jesus. Mary fell to the ground. Sudden tears filled her eyes and great sobs shook her whole body. And all she wanted in that moment was to cling to Jesus and never let him go. You'll be able to hold on to me later, Mary, Jesus said gently, and always be close to me. But now, go and tell the others that I'm alive. Mary ran and ran all the way to the city. She had never run so fast or so far in all her life. She felt that she could have run forever. She didn't even feel like her feet touched the ground. The sun seemed to be dancing and gleaming and bounding across the sky, racing with her and shining brighter than she could ever remember in the clear, fresh air. And it seemed to her that morning, as she ran, almost as if the whole world had been made anew, almost as if the whole world was singing for joy. The trees, tiny sounds in the grass, the birds, and her heart. Was God really making everything sad come untrue? Was he making even death come untrue? She couldn't wait to tell Jesus' friends. They won't believe it, she laughed. And she was right, of course. Now, I want you to take a second and imagine that you were Mary, that you were one of those women who on that morning walked to the tomb ready to wash Jesus' dead body. They were probably ready to have a sad morning. They were understandably not feeling very great as they walked to that tomb, but they knew that the right thing to do was to go there and to take care of Jesus' body. So imagine that you're walking there, you're really sad, you maybe don't even really want to do this, but you know that you have to do this. And when you get there, Jesus isn't there. What would you think? How would you feel? I think I'd probably be mostly confused. And I probably wouldn't really know what to do. And then imagine that there was suddenly an angel in front of you. This story says that the angel was clothed with lightning. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never worn lightning before. And it's kind of hard to imagine what that might even look like. But by saying that, it's basically just saying the angel was like nothing that they had ever seen. It was amazing. Nothing that they could have ever even imagined. So how would you feel if you saw this creature that was clothed in lightning? I think I'd probably be terrified. And I think that maybe I would run away, which would have been a bad idea because then I wouldn't have heard the good news that the angel had to say. And maybe I would have found it a little bit hard to actually believe that what the angel said was true. But that's one of the things that I love about this story of the women is even though maybe they were confused or unsure, they still believed. And they went and ran and told everyone else the good news that Jesus was alive again. And that's the story, well, part of the story of Jesus's resurrection. And it's something that we celebrate every Easter Sunday, but it's also something that we should be celebrating every day of the year. Because Jesus died and then came alive again, all of us can be saved. Jesus died for our sins, and when he came alive, he defeated sin and death. And that's a pretty big deal. And so that's something that we shouldn't just talk about on Easter Sunday, but that's something that we should talk about every day of the year. But it is especially fun to talk about it on Easter Sunday and to celebrate Easter in all of the different ways that we do celebrate. So I'm checking my timer now, and it says that there are 50 seconds left on there, which is very exciting. I have been waiting a long time to make these. I've been very excited about this day. So I am going to take a peek at them, just make sure that they're doing the right thing. Because I've never made these before, I don't know what the right thing is. So I'm just going to hope that they look okay, right? Yeah. Okay. Ooh, they do look delicious. They're starting to brown up a little bit. I can tell that I didn't close all of those tombs perhaps as much as I should have. That maybe I did leave a few cracks. But that's okay. They're still going to taste delicious, no matter what they end up looking like. Okay, my timer is done, but I am going to give it probably just another 30 seconds to make sure that they can finish up. Now, while they're baking is a great time for you to get started on cleaning up your kitchen. Because again, if you're like me, then you probably have a little bit of a mess in front of you. That's okay. It's worth it for the delicious rolls that we will get at the end. This is the hardest part though, is the waiting. Which actually makes me think about how hard it would have been for the disciples when they were waiting after Jesus had died. They didn't even know that there was something good to look forward to. At least we know that we have something delicious to look forward to. But the disciples, they had no idea that something great was coming. I think they're probably done, right? Okay. Let me pull these out. Ooh, oh my goodness. Oh, these look incredible. You do want to let them set for a little bit because they are going to be really hot to the touch right now. You don't want to burn yourself, as tempting as they are, and as much as I want to bite into one right now. I'm going to give it just a minute. I'm watching some more people along the path in the backyard right now. Well, not in our backyard, the path outside our backyard, walking their dogs. It's a great day to take a dog for a walk. I just don't have a dog, so I can't do that. But maybe I'll go for a walk a little bit later. Okay. See, you're watching me not be a very patient person, and you're watching me not have a lot of self-control, which is something that I'm trying to work on. But for the sake of this live stream, how about I get a bun? Ooh, it's definitely squishy, but like in a good way. Okay, here's my bun. And remember how as we were making these, I said that Jesus's body is like the marshmallow and the dough is like the tomb that we put Jesus's body into. And just like the resurrection story, when you open up this tomb, you're going to see, whoo, can you see? It's empty. There's no marshmallow left inside. Just like Jesus disappeared, at least that's what the guards thought he did, the marshmallow has disappeared in our bun. The even better news about Jesus is that he didn't disappear. He's still here, and Jesus is still alive. And I love getting to celebrate that with you today. I also love getting to bake with you because this is exciting. Okay, it's very hot. You'll also notice that my bun sort of collapsed on itself. If you wait longer, it won't do that. But like I said, I was a little bit impatient and wanted to see what happened. So I'm going to take a tester bite. Ooh, it's hot. And it's really, really delicious. Wow. I would love for you to let me know. You can either post something on Realm, maybe post a photo of you guys baking, or you can send me an email to let me know how they turned out. I would love to know how this worked for you. I would love to know how delicious yours are. But that is the end of our time baking together. This has been a very fun morning. I'm very glad that I got to spend it with you. And just before I go, I want to let you know that I love you, but Jesus loves you even more. And even better than that, Jesus is alive, and he's alive for you. So I guess I'll see you next time. Maybe we'll bake again. Maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. Bye, guys.